Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to be discussing the topic of Mars and what that rules over and how that impacts us as planetary beings. The first house is ruled by Mars, and so is the 8th house. So traditional ruler for the 8th house is Mars. So Scorpio's traditional ruler is Mars. The first house, it corresponds with the sign of Aries, and that's the sign that most people associate with Mars. I don't necessarily follow a system that I've seen anywhere else, but I refer to the way I look at astrology as Starseed astrology. This is just the way it was presented to me via like my guides and my own intuition and that sort of thing. So I see each house as part of the life cycle. So your first house is you coming into conception, you leaving source to have your own individual experience, and you take on this identity. This is even before you're born. You're still just like a spark of God, a soul, just, traveling the universe. So you take on this identity, and that is what's in your first house. That is your rising sign. It's a lens that you look at life through. Because you are now a living being, because you've stepped away from source, you are living, therefore you will have a death, because that experience of stepping away from source is not going to be infinite, because you are infinitely source. It's going to be a finite experience. Therefore that's where we get into the 8th house. So Mars rules life and death. The actual experience of life itself is ruled by Mars. You see the life cycle up into the 8th house. So the first house would be conception, and I always refer to this as the will to live. So you've taken on this persona or this perspective, and this is the lens that you're looking at life through, and this is what is making you want to have this singular experience, therefore giving you the will to live. The second house is feeding of the spark, giving that spark life, or given that perception life. So what does it take to make you want to stay in that, or what does it take to make you want to keep looking at life in such a manner? Okay, for instance, you're an Aries rising, you're a little spark of source, and you're like, hey, I'm an Aries rising. So in that, you are the soldier, you are the warrior. So your little spark is going to go about the universe to find some adversity, to find something to push back against, to find something to fight, because this is the identity that you have, that your spark has taken on, and now you need to feed that identity. So you're going to go into the second house. What is going to feed the identity of an Aries rising in the second house? Taurus, because Taurus is about duality. So in the second house, you're going to find, okay, there are people or beings or ways of being that are the complete opposite to the way I am. And I don't like that, or I'm going to push back against that. That's giving me some adversity. That's giving me something to fight against. So maybe in the first house, not necessarily you're looking for adversity, but you're looking for like adventure and, fighting and all that kind of stuff. Because it's just like a little sparky, spunky kind of energy. So yeah, when you step into the second house, regardless of what's there, obviously I'm literally using Aries and Taurus, whatever. There's always the duality presented there. Whatever sign is there, there is always duality presented. I'm a Libra rising, so my motto is like looking for balance and beauty. And in my second house is Scorpio, which can show, really ugly things, really ugly experiences with people, and how codependency can actually drain you, and how you can't always be balanced, because sometimes things are intimate and deep and painful, and so it provides that duality. So whatever is in the second house will show you the duality, and this is where you get the second will. So duality is actually the second will. And then you get the third house. Oh yeah, also it's worth noting that in the first house you do not know anything other than yourself. Even though you're like traveling the cosmos and whatever, in your own experience, you are the only thing that exists in in that moment. Obviously, you've stepped away from source. So yeah, source is there, but source is everything. But you are the only other thing that exists. So in the second house, you now are starting to realize, oh, actually, there is an opposite of me. And in the third house, you realize that there are many different things that are in existence. You are not the only one, and there isn't just an opposite of you. There are many different experiences and many different options to have. And this is where you'd be in the womb at this point, and you as a baby would be able to hear what is going on around you. So even if you looked at it like first house, you've just been put into the womb, but the womb is the cosmos, because it's infinitely dark, and you know, the planetary systems inside the body and whatnot. And then the second house is actually being fed through the umbilical cord and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes, yeah, babies do develop taste preferences in the womb of what they don't like and what they do like. And then the third house is you're hearing different people. Now, you know that there's just more than you. Babies don't realise that the mother is not them. Up until a certain age, they still believe their mother. Even, I think it's like up until 1, they feel that their mother is an extension of their self. I hope I'm articulating myself well enough to explain that I see it. And in Starseed astrology, this is something that can, one thing can seem like it's in one place, but it can be in many different places at one time. So you can literally be in your mum's womb while traveling the cosmos. So third house is conscious thoughts, and now you're having ideas and you're actually being able to think and explore, and you're aware of all these other things that are in existence. And this is where you develop your third will. Okay, so 3 wills. You have the positive, I'm out here to kick some butt. The negative, I don't like this thing, or this thing is opposite from me. It's, you know, it may cause me some issues in the future. And then the third will is, oh, there are many different options. I don't either have to be this or that. I can be something else entirely. So then when we get into the fourth house, the point of ejection, i.e. rejection, and the inherited karma that you take on through your mother, this gives you the illusion of free will. So people will say, oh, you've got free will, you can do what you want. You don't. You don't really have free will. You have 3 wills, and you get to pick out of those 3. But people think they are making choices just off of their own creativity. But the biggest creative moment was when you came into conception and you chose your rising sign. Then you're not really creating much after that point. You're picking, you're choosing, but you don't have free will. So without getting into, you know, point of ejection and rejection and inherited karma and explaining every single thing, I'm just going to go through the rest quite quickly. So the 5th house is childhood, like baby. This is actually being a baby and going up into childhood, where, you know, that Leo energy, it's all about you're the star of the show. But think about how much energy and attention babies need. You cannot ignore a baby. It's just not, the baby's not going to survive if you do that. So 5th house is about that babyhood and that development. 6th house is now where, depending on how your baby stage was and that childhood development, I'd say up until about the age of 7, but I feel like that's even a stretch. I feel like it's more like 3, 4, 5. This is how your 6th house is, and this is what actually determines what you actually look like, not your 1st house. Your 1st house determines what you look at life like, therefore what you look like, because what as within, so without. But also when you think about the cultural influences and all those different things, genetics and stuff like that, in the 1st house, that's also influencing what you look like. What you truly look like in regards to your attractiveness and that sort of thing is actually your 6th house. It is your mental diet. It is the way you talk to yourself. So you could grow up in a place where, you know, everybody has really deep skin tones and, you know, curly afro hair, and you are really pale and blonde, and you may think you are the ugliest thing ever, depending on your sixth house, how you talk to yourself, what is it that you actually think and believe. Now, if your sixth house is in a good condition, you're going to be like, oh, I'm really beautiful, and people will respond to you in that way. They'll be like, wow, you're so different, you're so beautiful, we've never seen anybody like you. But if your sixth house is in a poor condition, you're going to be like, oh, I'm an ugly duckling, I just need to stay in the house, like I need to do whatever to look like everybody else. So that is really what you look like in terms of how the world sees you. You know, like if somebody's pretty or not so pretty, it's also the reason why you can have identical twins and one of them will be more attractive than the other. It's the sixth house. It's not to do with the first house. So yes, the first house rules how you look, yeah, but it doesn't at the same time. It doesn't have the impact that a lot of people think it does. Like people will be like, oh, all Libra risings are beautiful. I'm a Libra rising, I think I'm cute, but all Libra risings aren't beautiful. And if I want to see how I do look to other people a lot of the time, I want to look at my sixth house, because that's going to show me how other people are seeing me. So seventh house is the meeting of other people and having relationships with other people. So fifth house, remember, is baby stage. The sixth house is now your little thoughts percolating about how you feel about yourself and whatever is going on around you. And that is going to be based off of how you was treated in the fifth house. So if you were ignored, you're going to think you're unworthy and you're not good enough. And then the sixth house is going to be like, yeah, you're ugly, you know. And then in the seventh house, you know, look at it like you're going to school, you make your first little friend, your little bestie, and you're having these interactions with other people. Also, you may find people who are going to be like competitive with you, because the seventh house rules that sort of thing as well. And then this is just life, you know, you go on to have your relationships as a big person. In the eighth house, this is where you die. The eighth house is you passing over and onto the other side. Again, I'm not going to go into it so deeply, because I'm finding myself going a bit too deep into it, because I feel like if I don't fully explain it, it doesn't really make sense in regards to, it will be hard for people to understand it, because I know a lot of people have learned the traditional way of astrology. But the ninth house is, you know, after you've died, your faith. So what did you believe while you was alive, and what do you believe now? Depending on where it's going to take you, where you're going to go, where's your soul going to go afterwards. No, the 10th house is your public persona. So think of it like when they put that thing out in the paper, so and so has passed. What do people know you as? What is that public persona? Oh, so and so's passed. They were a mother, they were a firefighter, they were a this and a that. That is your 10th house public persona. The 11th house is friends, wishes, hopes, dreams. These are the people gathering at your funeral, the people who turn up for you, your collective, your community, that will discuss your hopes, wishes and dreams and what it is that you achieved. 12th house is you dissolving back into source. First house, start all over again. You do the thing all over again. So as far as I know, that's how it works here as a human being on the planet Earth in the third dimension. I don't really know about anywhere else. Could be a completely different life cycle somewhere else, which is really interesting to think about, but not the point of this video. So I'm going to keep moving. To just get more into the first house, 8th house axis, because obviously that is the Martian energy, and how I've already explained how it is way more than what we actually look like. Even the 4th house has an impact on how we look, because depending on the inherited karmas that you had to take on when you was being pushed out of the womb, that can really alter the way you look as well. Think about a baby, how squashed up their faces are when they come out of the womb. Their little squished faces after going through the birthing canal and being shown their inherited karma. So as within, so without. So they've been shown all this stuff and taken it on. So that is ultimately going to change the way they look as well. So you want to look at your fourth house too. It really is about the sixth house and the mental diet, because how you see yourself as within so without is how other people are going to see you. So you may be somebody who did have that, but you was like super handsome and just seen in seen as like a really capable person, really attractive person, whereas if you took on like a load of tough inherited karmas and your sixth house wasn't in a great condition or your fourth house wasn't in a great condition, these things will affect it. Mars rules the life and death cycle as well as sex and procreation. Because Mars rules and motivation, because Mars rules life and death, it rules sex and procreation and motivation. What are we motivated to do while we are here? We have a finite amount of time. Because the ego, Mars is associated with the ego. The sun is exalted in Aries because it rules the ego. Because it's so egotistical, it does really well in the sun. Because of that egoic influence, you do not want to die. People say, oh, I'm not scared of death. And even if somebody's Mars is in a poor aspect or it's got crazy stuff going on, these are people that will be wanting to unalive themselves. These will be the people that want to give up on life because their Mars is in a poor condition. They don't have the will to live. They don't have that first house energy strong in their chart. They've lost it. They didn't have it, or it's been messed with or manipulated in some way, shape or form. So because of the ego, if your Mars is in good standing, you do not want to pass from this earth. So there is no real alternative for that, because everybody is going to pass from this earth. You know it, because Mars is also showing you your death showing you your passing in the 8th house. The only alternative to that is to have sex and procreate, because through procreation, your DNA will still be on this earth. You will never leave the earth if there is a part of your DNA. And I'm not talking about like soul, whatever, because I really feel like your soul goes about the business. I don't personally believe in ghosts in the traditional way that people do. I believe that if people are being haunted or having some experience like that, it's actually them on another timeline. Like, I do not believe that it's just a random thing, But anyway, it's like, all right, let me just go to that a little bit, because it does go into the topic. It's actually them on another timeline. So it's a part of their soul, like a fractured piece of them. And you only really hear about, well, not only really hear, but most of the time they say, ghosts and stuff, they die in really traumatic ways. So much so that they couldn't process the fact that they had actually died. They oftentimes think they're still alive. So it's part of your own psyche or consciousness or soul trapped in an illusion. And that's why people have run-ins with that, because that part of themselves is trying to be freed and reconnect with source, or reconnect with, the soul cycle that is in, or whatever. So I don't believe in ghosts, basically, is what I'm saying. I do think that sort of thing happens, but what's happening is not just a random occurrence of, the spirit wandering the earth. No. So yeah, like I said, with the DNA lineage, it prevents you from ever truly dying, and the ego loves that. So the ego wants to have sex, and the ego wants you to procreate. The ego wants you to leave a baby here, and it takes away that fear of death a little bit, or the fear of the unknown. So you're going to see somebody's motivation in life. What is it they're going after? What is it that they want to do, and how they're going to go about it? You're also going to see their sex style. Not a sextile, their sex style. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely sign up to my Patreon, because I got the spicy reads over there, but I'm also uploading spicy astrology content that I can't put on YouTube. It's Scorpio, or the 8th house, is where we hide things from ourselves and we hide things from others. You know what the 8th house is really like? The 8th house is really like you've been given some homework in the 4th house. Here you go, do your homework. This is what you got to work through, your inherited karmas. I know you didn't do it, or some tidying. No, it's more like cleaning. Like, I know you didn't make this mess, but you need to clean it up. So you've got to figure out how to clean this up. And the 8th house is like you've done half of it and you've shoved the rest of it in a cupboard, and you're hoping nobody else sees it, and you've forgotten about it, you've forgotten that it's there, or you just don't want to think about it. So you're hiding it from yourself, you're hiding it from other people. But eventually what's in the 8th house, you keep putting things in there, it's going to spill out and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's a mess in there. It's an absolute mess, okay? And much like I said about, the ghost situation, obviously if somebody dies in trauma, then that's one thing. But if they die with trauma and guilt and that kind of stuff on their mind, it feels unresolved, trapping them in a number 8, a karmic loop, a karmic cycle. So, I have bad belief systems. I'm working on myself because I do not want to get messed up when I pass from this world. But yeah, really, that's what the 8th house is about, death. And if you are going to get trapped in the soul cycle or the soul rinse and repeat that many people are trapped in. And that's why I say, like, I don't believe that people just like, and they're like, oh, they're watching you from... I don't believe that. I believe because I think everybody's already in heaven on another timeline. Like, we're all having a heavenly experience somewhere, but you're also having another experience somewhere else, living a different life, being a different person, or having a different first house. So your perspective will be different and you'll believe yourself to be different, having a different incarnation somewhere else. So, and through that is how we're dealing with what is in the 4th house, because one lifetime, one person, one soul cycle in one lifetime is not going to deal with the infinite BS that is up in your 4th house, So, yeah, the 4th house and the 8th house are kind of connected. I suppose it's because they're both like water houses. So with the 8th house, they say that it also rules birth, like giving birth to your child and your death. So if in a woman's chart, you can see how she's going to give birth, if she'll have like I have my Mars in the 8th house and I give birth quickly because that Mars energy is giving the quickness to it. And obviously the 8th house is representing giving birth. That also will tell me something about my death, but I haven't looked into that because I don't really want to know. But when you're actually born, as I said, you're being told, here you go, this is the stuff that you got to clean up. It could be the moment you're sort of born, or you come in, because the 4th house is when you take on a physical body actually in this world. Before that you are in the womb, but you're not like physically out and out in the 3D. It could be that as you go through that veil and you pass through, it's like that's when you start shoving stuff in that cupboard, because I can imagine it to be really overwhelming. Like, okay, I've got to do all this stuff. And as you're actually going through the birth canal, I know it can happen really quickly for some people, but it can take hours for other people. And I wonder, is that a representation for how that soul is already struggling with the inherited karma that's been passed on to it? It's like, oh my God, here you go, here's another because babies are tired when they come out. Like, you're being shown all these things. Yeah, you got to sort this out, you got to sort that out, you got to sort this out. So by the time they're pushed out and actually in the world, they've already started, or they may be in the process of starting to shove things in that cupboard. What I mean by this is, like, you can meet children who are really, really shy, really, really anxious, and people say, oh, that's because their dad was like that, or that's because blah, blah, blah was like that. You have, as a baby, how do you have a point of reference? Obviously, I know why you have a point of reference, the 3rd house, because, you're getting the 3rd wheel. and you're aware that there's other options out there. But in the fourth house, you're given the will, or you're given the illusion of free will. So you've got to sort all this out, and you have the choice to. And if you don't, that's because you're rubbish and you have messed up. But it's not because you're rubbish and you've messed up. You never had free will. You only had three options. So you could only really do up to a certain point at any given time, because you didn't really have the option presented to you. And not even the option, you never had the option of free will. You only had certain options, and those certain options are only going to take you so far. So wait, what was my thought pattern? So when I talk about inherited karmas and shoving things in the cupboard in the 8th house, the things that you're hiding and you don't want to deal with, and the things that you're trying to hide from other people, it could even be that through that birth canal you're shown some really crazy things, some inherited karmas that you've got to deal with, passed on through your DNA and your bloodline, and now you're trying to hide it from yourself or hide it from other people so that you don't have to deal with it, because you don't have the capability to fix it in one lifetime, but you believe that you have, because you believe you have free will and you can achieve anything, when in reality you can't. So that's my video on Mars through the houses. I know it's a really different take on traditional astrology. That's why I just refer to this as Starseed astrology, because I haven't really heard or seen anybody explain astrology in this manner before. And it may be for you, or it may float your boat, or it may be something you're into, or it may not be for you. And no shade, but drop a comment and let me know what you think, because I'd be interested to know. Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be discussing the topic of Mars and what that rules over and how that impacts us as planetary beings. The